Chapter 451. Oh no! Su Xiaoxiao, who was too embarrassed to run out, suddenly ran in, gasping for breath. That you're your companion? She looked at Luo Qingtong anxiously, and pointed outside. She panted, and couldn't even finish her sentence. Luo Qingtong's expression changed. Chu Wenhao? What happened to him? Where is he? Bring me there, Luo Qingtong said. With a turn of her body, she brought Luo Qingtong up and dashed outside. In the Tianyu Branch Academy, in a small forest not far from the lower-class dormitory, 2 intermediate-class students surrounded Chu Wenhao with a group of people. You're Chu Wenhao? The youth with the long face on the left looked at him and sneered. How dare a person from a small, inferior country be so arrogant? Don't you know where you are? I think you're tired of living. His face was full of disdain. For people from aristocratic families of Tianyu Empire like them, Chu Wenhao, a student from an inferior country, was like a weed on the ground, not worth mentioning. He dared to speak up for Luo Qingtong. He was looking for trouble. Who didn't know that the imperial family of Tianyu didn't like Luo Qingtong? The 7th princess hated her to the core. Moreover, she offended Zhang Haopeng, the 5th student on the genius list. In Tianyu branch, there were many people who wanted to curry favor with them and make trouble for Luo Qingtong. But she was the fiancée of the 5th prince. They couldn't go too far. Otherwise it would be slapping the imperial family in the face. Therefore they stared at Chu Wenhao, who told him to speak up for Luo Qingtong. He was asking for it. Go teach him a lesson. Break the meridians in one of his arms and legs. Then kick him out of Tianyu branch. The intermediate-class student with triangular eyes on the right sneered. They had come at someone's behest. The other party was from a side branch of Tianyu's royal family. As long as they crippled Chu Wenhao and kicked him out of the Tianyu branch college, even if they were expelled from the Tianyu branch college, their families would still have a meteoric rise under Chu Wenhao's protection. Their talents were only average to begin with. If they continued to cultivate in the Tianyu branch school, they would only be average. If he could get the other party's protection and promise to raise his family's status in the Tianyu Empire, what was there to hesitate about? Immediately, a group of people surrounded Chu Wenhao. You guys! Chu Wenhao looked at the people surrounding him and was shocked. He didn't think that these people would be so bold as to be so heavy-handed in the Tianyu Branch Academy. One had to know that killing and personal fights were absolutely prohibited in the academy. Once discovered, they would be expelled from the school. However, these people didn't seem to care about this at all. The moment they arrived, they gave out ruthless orders. After the triangular-eyed youth finished speaking, a group of people rushed towards Chu Wenhao. Bang bang bang. A group of people started fighting. The 2 intermediate-class students didn't make a move. They stood outside to prevent Chu Wenhao from escaping. Now was the registration period, so there weren't many people walking around the school. Moreover, they were in a remote forest. Once they crippled Chu Wenhao's meridians, it wouldn't matter even if they were discovered. These people's attacks were very ruthless. Just as Chu Wenhao was in dire straits and found it difficult to defend himself, he was ruthlessly knocked to the ground. Chapter 452. Luo Qingtong's figure appeared in the small forest. Bang bang bang. She jumped into the battle circle, and in an instant, those who were besieging Chu Wenhao fell to the ground. The 2 intermediate-class students who were guarding the periphery were caught off guard. By the time they reacted, Luo Qingtong had already taken care of their followers. The 2 of them looked at the young girl in front of them angrily. Why would Luo Qingtong appear here? They clearly saw her and Chu Wenhao separated, and the latter went back alone. That was why they blocked her here. Luo Qingtong, get out of the way. This Chu Wenhao has offended us. He must pay the price. The long-faced youth said with a calm face. The triangular-eyed youth beside him also looked at Luo Qingtong with a cold face. The 2 of them were very surprised by Luo Qingtong's appearance. But even so, they must teach Chu Wenhao a lesson. Otherwise, if they missed this opportunity, they would be vigilant. If they wanted to attack Chu Wenhao again and cripple him, it would not be possible. Thinking like this, the 2 of them were very unyielding. Oh, then what if I don't let you go? Luo Qingtong looked at the 2 of them coldly. She swept a glance at Chu Wenhao, who was lying on the ground. Seeing the injuries on his body, and the traces of being stepped on the back of his hand, the bloody light in her eyes flickered in an instant. "Who told you to touch him?" Luo Qingtong's voice was cold. Chu Wenhao had just entered the academy, and had not even returned to his own dormitory. How could there be people who specially blocked this place to wait for him? Offended them? Luo Qingtong did not believe a single word of these people's words. Her gaze swept across this remote little forest. If not for Su Xiaoxiao coincidentally seeing this group of people blocking Chu Wenhao's way into this little forest, and seeing that they did not have good intentions, she quickly ran over to inform her. She was afraid that if something happened to Chu Wenhao here, no one would know. How could these people target Chu Wenhao for no reason? The only possibility was that they were targeting her. They wanted to attack him by dealing with Chu Wenhao. It had to be said that this method had successfully angered her. Luo Qingtong didn't have any other problems, but she was protective. He was very protective. Anyone who dared to touch her people would die. Even if he didn't die, he would suffer a fate worse than death. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed coldly as she looked at these people, thinking about how to deal with them. That long-faced youth was infuriated by her words. "Luo Qingtong, don't be so shameless. Since you insist on getting involved in this mess, we'll fulfill your wish." The two of them looked at each other, and immediately reached a consensus. If Luo Qingtong wanted to court death, then they wouldn't stop her. Anyway, they didn't take the initiative to attack Luo Qingtong. She was the one who came to their door and bumped into their attack. Even if she was accidentally injured, she couldn't blame them. Was that not the case? Maybe they could even gain more benefits because of this matter. The two of them thought so and instantly laughed sinisterly as they attacked Luo Qingtong. Rumble. The two's movements were very ruthless. There was a faint sound of wind and thunder as they attacked Luo Qingtong directly. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed with blood-red light. In an instant, she had locked on to their fatal points. She just needed to hit them, and let them quietly wait for their deaths. At that time, no one would be able to find out that it was her. Chapter 453. Bah! Where did this bastard come from? He actually dares to bully people here. While speaking, a tower-like figure suddenly appeared in front of Luo Qingtong. Bang bang bang. The attacks of the two youths were blocked in an instant. Luo Qingtong also retracted the power that she was about to use. Yuan Hu. The two intermediate class students who were forced to retreat looked at the sturdy youth who appeared in front of them, and their faces instantly turned ugly. Yuan Hu, Yuan little tyrant. The other party is the tyrant of the imperial capital. In the circle of aristocratic families of the same age, almost no one dares to provoke him, because he was born with divine strength, and also activated the petrification soul seal. If not for the fact that his petrification soul seal was a trash soul seal, it would be useless after everyone advanced to the martial lord realm. His future was absolutely limitless, because it was a trash soul seal, and his martial arts talent was extremely poor. He could only rely on brute force to fight. Therefore, after confirming that he would not be able to advance any further in the future, he was thrown into the trash class to dawdle. But even so, this little tyrant is a strange existence in the Tianyu branch that is difficult to provoke. There is no other reason. With his innate divine strength, combined with the petrification soul seal, even a martial lord would not be able to easily break through his defense. Therefore, although the little tyrant may not have any opportunities to advance in the future, but when it comes to oppressing low-level warriors, it is a sure thing. When the two intermediate class students saw that he came out to meddle in other people's business, their faces instantly turned green. Little tyrant, this is a misunderstanding. They just wanted to teach that advanced class student called Chu Wenhao a lesson. Who doesn't know that Yuan who regards the lower class as his territory? Whoever dares to bully the people of the lower class will be beaten back by him. How unlucky were they to meet him? The two intermediate class students also had a painful expression on their faces. They wanted to explain, but Yuan who did not listen to them, and directly rushed up to beat them up. Scram! Do you really think my eyes are blind? The next time you dare to bully our lower class people, I will kill you, Yuan who said as he kicked each of them, and directly sent them flying. The latter two did not dare to resist. Of course, they could not resist, and could only leave dejectedly. When he left, he didn't even dare to let out a fart. Looking at their departing figures, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly. The blood-red light in her eyes flickered, bloodthirsty and cold. "Are you that Luo Qingtong?" After teaching those people a lesson, Yuan Hu turned around and looked at her arrogantly. "The words you said during the registration were so damn satisfying. Just because of those words, I'll take care of you from now on." He patted his chest and said, "If anyone dares to bully you in the future, just tell me." As Yuan Hu was speaking, he suddenly smelled a trace of medicinal fragrance. Luo Qingtong had taken out a bottle of medicinal liquid for Chu Wenhao to drink to prevent any hidden injuries in his body. Little Overlord Yuan's eyes lit up as soon as the medicinal fragrance entered his nose. He had been beaten up by his father, Great General Yuan, ever since he was a child. He could tell whether the medicine was good or bad just by smelling it. This trace of medicinal liquid's fragrance was definitely a good medicine. Who would have thought that the other party would have such a good item on him? Yuan Hu reached out to grab it without hesitation. "Hey, wait. It's too wasteful to let him use this medicinal liquid. You should give this bottle to me as a filial gift. Let him use other medicine." Yuan Hu was used to being overbearing. How could the title of Little Overlord Yuan be fake? In the entire Tianyu Imperial City, other than a few people's things that he could not touch, he could snatch the other people's things however he wanted. Now that he had taken a fancy to Luo Qingtong's medicinal liquid, he naturally did not hesitate to snatch it back. He had helped them, so wasn't it normal to give this medicinal liquid to him? Anyway, that kid wouldn't die, so what medicinal liquid couldn't he use? However, he did not know that those people had the intention to cripple Chu Wenhao. The latter's meridians had already suffered some injuries in the fight just now. Luo Qingtong took out this medicinal liquid to treat the injuries to his meridians. Chapter 454. The next second, she suddenly grabbed Yuan Hu's hand and pulled out a silver hairpin from her hair bun. With a bang, it pierced through his wrist and nailed his hand to the ground. "You can have my things if I give it to you. If I don't give it to you." Luo Qingtong looked at him coldly. "Then you can't snatch it. Do you understand?" Yes. Yuan Hu wanted to curse, but he didn't know why. When he raised his head and met Luo Qingtong's eyes, he felt a chill in his heart. He suddenly had a feeling that Luo Qingtong was being merciful to him. Otherwise, his fate would not be as simple as having his hand nailed to the ground. In fact, it was true. If not for Yuan Hu's meddling, he didn't know what would happen to him. Just look at Master Lu, who dared to exchange Luo Qingtong's medicine in the Black Field. Yuan Hu's fate would not be any better than his. How could Luo Qingtong's things be so easy to snatch? Strangely enough, when Luo Qingtong's silver hairpin was inserted into Yuan Hu's wrist, there was no blood at all. Moreover, it didn't hurt at all. It was as if it wasn't his wrist. It just made him unable to exert any strength. When Chu Wenhao finished drinking the medicine, Luo Qingtong raised her hand and took back the silver hairpin. In an instant, Yuan Hu regained his strength. How did you do it?" He looked at his wrist curiously and found that other than a bloody hole, his wrist was not injured at all. What was going on? Moreover, his petrification soul seal defense had no effect on her attack. Yuan Hu was shocked. Just now, he was shocked by Luo Qingtong's gaze. Only now did he react. Wasn't the process of Luo Qingtong's silver hairpin too smooth? One must know that even if a martial lord expert could temporarily release his inner strength, it would not be so easy to break his defense. Yuan Hu stared at Luo Qingtong with his eyes wide open. The latter was too lazy to explain to him that his attack just now had actually penetrated the flaw in his defense and directly nailed into the space between the tendons in his wrist. That area was equivalent to an empty crevice. Apart from a bit of flesh and blood on the surface, it was completely harmless to him. This was also because Yuan Hu had helped her before. Of course, Luo Qingtong didn't need his help. However, she had always been a person who repaid kindness with kindness and revenge with hatred. Yuan Hu wouldn't go so far as to hurt her. As for the others, it was a different story. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed, as she thought of the people who had come to attack Chu Wenhao. A bloodthirsty smile appeared on his face. Tianyu Branch Institution. On the way to the elite class dormitory area, the group of people who had gone to find trouble with Chu Wenhao was now limping, looking indescribably wretched. Hiss! Ouch! Damn it! Yuan Hu, that lunatic, he was so ruthless. The long-faced youth rubbed his wound and hissed in pain as he cursed. He still wants to protect that Luo Qingtong. He really doesn't know his own worth. Does he know how many people want Luo Qingtong to be unlucky? Just based on his... Before he could finish his words, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Is that so? I also want to know how many people want me to be unlucky, especially... Chapter 455. Luo Qingtong. Seeing the girl appear in front of them, the long-faced youth and the people beside him were stunned at first, then said with disdain, "Even if you know, so what? Luo Qingtong, you are just a daughter of a small inferior country's marquis house with the future status of the fifth prince's wife. Even if you know who is against you, what can you do to them?" Chi. As he said this, he loudly sneered. The people around him also followed and laughed loudly. Is that so? In this ear-piercing laughter, the smile on Luo Qingtong's lips became deeper and deeper, more and more intense. Then let's see if I can do anything to them. As she said this, the aura around her burst out. Level 9 Great Martial General Realm. In this period of time, Luo Qingtong had completely comprehended all the insights from the battle with Patriarch Fei. Her strength directly rose from level 7 Great Martial General Realm to level 9. The reason why she did not advance to Martial Marquis Realm, it was because she was still waiting for the perfect moment of advancement. In the cultivation of a martial artist, the advancement of every realm was extremely important. The more solid the foundation was, the easier it would be to advance in cultivation in the future. The increase in battle strength would also be more powerful than martial artists of the same level. The same was true for spirit practitioners. There was a perfect state for every breakthrough of a major realm. That was the current realm, unable to advance, unable to be raised, the peak of battle strength. That kind of advancement, once the realm was crossed, could immediately crush those of the same level. Therefore, even if Luo Qingtong could already advance to Martial Marquis Realm, she had been suppressing herself and was unwilling to advance. She wanted to have a perfect realm advancement every time. In any case, at her age, level 9 Great Martial General Realm was enough to shock people. Not to mention, Luo Qingtong's true strength was enough to kill any Martial King Realm expert. If her true battle strength was made public, who knew how many people would be frightened? This was an absolute monster. Not to mention Luo Qingtong's terrifying alchemy skills. Just her strength alone was enough to shock the world. The Empire of Qin's Sacred Academy recruited heaven-grade geniuses every year. But there was almost no one who could surpass Luo Qingtong's strength. With her strength and battle strength, once it was leaked, it would immediately attract the competition of the sacred academies. She was afraid that all the major forces in the Holy Dynasty would rush to recruit her under their banner upon hearing the news. As for Luo Qingtong's identity of a small inferior country, no one would care. With the identity and status of those forces, a casual word, Easternly country, and the Luo family's status would immediately rise. It was not impossible to become an empire. However, that was based on the fact that Luo Qingtong only had this much strength. But in fact, Luo Qingtong had too many abilities and secrets. Array formation, refining pill, refining, and the inheritance of a mortal palace. If any of these things were revealed, it would be enough to shock the various forces. If they knew that Luo Qingtong had all of these abilities, they would be shocked. Then they would not only want to recruit Luo Qingtong, but also want to imprison her and take her for their own. In her previous life, the various forces and the ancient martial ability world's various encirclement and suppression of her were still vivid in her mind. Luo Qingtong would never easily reveal her abilities and identity. But now, Luo Qingtong sneered at the crowd in front of her, who were completely stunned because of excessive shock. The smile on her lips was so bloodthirsty and enchanting. Chapter 456. You, the long-faced youth, and the people around him all widened their eyes in shock. Ninth level of the Great Martial General Realm. Luo Qingtong's strength was unexpectedly at the ninth level of the Great Martial General Realm. This strength, in the Tianyu Branch Academy, may not be the strongest. After all, in the academy, there were some students who had been in the academy for a long time, Martial Marquis and Martial Kings. But Luo Qingtong was a new student who had just entered the academy. Her strength had already reached the ninth level of the Great Martial General Realm. And this ninth level of the Great Martial General Realm was not an ordinary ninth level of the Great Martial General Realm. The group of people felt the pressure coming from Luo Qingtong's body, and in an instant, the aura around them became somewhat stagnant. This was clearly a pressure that only Martial Marquis experts could have. Obviously, Luo Qingtong's strength was enough to advance to the Martial Marquis realm. It was just that she suppressed it and did not advance. 15 years old Martial Marquis realm. Back then, even the fifth prince was not so amazing, right? Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at Luo Qingtong. The expression on their faces was both shocked and at a loss. Wasn't it said that Luo Qingtong was only the legitimate daughter of a low-level marquis, and that her talent and strength were only average, and that she was not worthy of the empire's fifth prince? But now that they saw Luo Qingtong, which part of her talent and strength was average? Which part of her was not worthy of the fifth prince? Her talent clearly surpassed that of the fifth prince. The group of people's faces turned pale. Suddenly, a youth seemed to realize something and turned around to run. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. It's the two of them. The two of them ordered us to do this. He pointed at the long-faced youth and the triangular-eyed youth at the front and was about to run out. However, the surrounding environment was constantly changing. No matter how he ran, it seemed that he was in the same place. He was clearly still in the Tianyu Branch Academy, but it seemed that he had gone to another time and space. Array. When Luo Qingtong appeared, she had already set up an array in the vicinity, enclosing this group of people and herself in an independent space. That was why she was able to display her strength so brazenly. Luo Qingtong, that youth and everyone else's complexion had completely changed. Especially the long-faced youth and the triangular-eyed youth. The two of them were considered the planners of this operation. At this moment, their faces were full of panic. Even the stupidest person could see that Luo Qingtong was going to attack them. Not to mention they weren't stupid. Luo Qingtong, let us go. We will tell you everything. I guarantee that I won't hide anything. They begged for mercy with panicked and fearful expressions. However, really? Unfortunately, I don't want to listen to you anymore. She naturally had a way to find out the other party's identity and then give him a big gift. Luo Qingtong looked at them indifferently and waved her hand. Swish, swish, swish. Luo Qingtong flicked pills into their mouths. Before anyone could react, they were already forced to swallow the pill. What did you make us eat? The long-faced youth's complexion was extremely pale. He lay on the ground, desperately digging at his throat, trying to spit out the pill he had just swallowed. However, how could the pill refined by Luo Qingtong give anyone the chance to spit it out? The moment it entered their mouths, it had already turned into medicinal power and entered their bodies. Zombie. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes at them. The pill I gave you is called Zombie. Enjoy the surprise that this pill has brought to you, including the person behind you. Want to deal with her? Very well. Let's see if they can handle this surprise that I've given them. Chapter 457. Haha. A burst of laughter came from the dormitory area of the advanced class. In a courtyard for the advanced class students to rest and play, a group of young men and women in luxurious clothes were gathered there. Judging from their clothes, they were all members of the royal family of Tianyu. Some of them were even members of the aristocratic families of Tianyu Empire. At this moment, they were chatting and laughing together. A young man with a feminine face, eyebrows slightly drooping, and a somewhat gloomy expression, was currently surrounded by the crowd. Haha, Zhao, did you really send someone to deal with Luo Qingtong's follower? A young master beside him laughed. I didn't expect that. You acted so quickly and directly took action. What else could it be? The gloomy heir Zhao played with the wine glass in his hand and sneered at them. If I didn't act quickly, you would be the ones to take action. Everyone knew that the seventh princess hated Luo Qingtong. Whoever could make her unhappy, without damaging the royal family's reputation, would be favored by the seventh princess. Among the crowd, there were countless people who wanted to curry favor with the seventh princess. The men wanted to please the fifth prince's younger sister. As for the woman, she wanted to curry favor with the fifth prince through the seventh princess. Ahem. His words were so straightforward that the young master didn't know how to respond. Indeed, he had already arranged everything, and was prepared to take action against Luo Qingtong tomorrow. But he didn't expect heir Zhao to act so quickly and be ahead of them. Alas, Luo Qingtong had just arrived at Tianyu Branch School. The only person she was close to was Chu Wenhao. Crippling him would definitely hurt Luo Qingtong and make her suffer. But heir Zhao beat them to it. They didn't know how long it would take for them to deal with Luo Qingtong in the future. Although Luo Qingtong was in this school, and there would be plenty of opportunities to deal with her in the future, the person who showed up in front of the seventh princess first would leave the deepest impression on her. The group of aristocratic young masters and collateral members of the royal family instantly felt that they had missed the best opportunity. In the future, when he showed his face in front of the seventh princess, he was afraid that he would not be able to compare to heir Zhao. Feeling their envious, jealous, and hateful gazes, Crown Prince Zhao was very pleased with himself. He had already found out that Chu Wenhao's spot was given to him by Luo Qingtong. He concluded that the other party had a close relationship with Luo Qingtong. So he made arrangements in advance to deal with him on the first day of school. Now it seemed that what he had done was right. When his men crippled Chu Wenhao, the seventh princess would be overjoyed and praise him greatly. At that time, not only would he be able to use this opportunity to get close to the seventh princess, he might even have the chance to impress the fifth prince. At that time, he might even be able to raise his status as the heir of the Zhao clan even further. As he thought of this, he became even more complacent. At this moment, someone came to report. Your Highness, those people have returned to report on their mission. Oh, Crown Prince Zhao's eyes suddenly lit up. He looked around at everyone and saw that they had all turned their attention to him. He immediately laughed proudly and said, "It seems that the matter has been settled. Invite all of them here and tell me in detail about the situation at that time. Those who speak well will be heavily rewarded." Chapter 458. Looking at the people standing in front of him, heir Zhao frowned. Why did they look so strange? He saw that the intermediate class students' limbs were stiff, and their eyes were lifeless. They looked like they were about to die. Heir Zhao's heart was filled with anger. How could these people be so useless against a new student who had just entered the school? Looking at his appearance, he couldn't have been beaten up by Chu Wenhao, right? They were so useless. Heir Zhao subconsciously wanted to vent his anger, but when he thought of the disciples around him, he immediately suppressed the anger in his heart. Tell me how you dealt with Chu Wenhao. And how did Luo Qingtong feel sad? He glanced at the people around him and said proudly. He said that after crippling Chu Wenhao, he would lure Luo Qingtong over and let her see the fate of her followers. All of this was naturally to please the seventh princess. As soon as he said this, there was a burst of laughter. That Luo Qingtong must be very sad. I heard that Chu Wenhao's grandfather treated her well when they were in Dongli country. A delicate and pretty young lady from an aristocratic family covered her mouth and said with a smile, "Heir Zhao's move is good. Cripple him, and then call Luo Qingtong over. It's best to tell her the reason why Chu Wenhao was crippled. At that time, who knows how much regret and pain she will feel." A disciple from a branch of the imperial family said, "That's right." On the other side, a young lady from an aristocratic family gently waved the round fan in her hand and raised her eyebrows. After crippling his meridians, that Chu Wenhao can no longer stay in Tianyu Branch. Even the trash class won't accept a cripple like him. When he is expelled, I'm afraid that Luo Qingtong's heart will be even more unbearable. If that Luo Qingtong's psychological endurance is slightly weaker, she will be depressed and vomit blood. At this point, she chuckled and covered her mouth with the fan. If the seventh princess knew about this, she will be very happy. Zhao's move is brilliant, but it's also because we didn't catch up. Otherwise, we might not lose to you. The group of people talked all at once, discussing all kinds of methods they would use to torture Chu Wenhao and deal with Luo Qingtong. Each method was more vicious than the other. They were talking in full swing, but they didn't notice that the group of people standing in front of them had already made a move. There wasn't a trace of expression on the ghostly pale faces. The young man with a long face led the intermediate class students at this moment suddenly raised their heads. In the next second, they suddenly howled and pounced like ferocious beasts. They used their hands and feet to rush at the gathered members of the royal family and aristocratic families. Ah! Screams rang out. Those members of the royal family and aristocratic families, who were chatting happily, did not expect such a thing to happen. In an instant, they were pushed to the ground by the students of the intermediate class, and were fiercely bitten. Even though they were stronger than the students of the intermediate class, they were caught off guard, and had no time to react. Many of them had their flesh bitten off while they were still alive. That wasn't all. Those intermediate class students didn't seem to be afraid of death or pain. Once they caught someone, they would bite them to death. No matter how they attacked, it was useless. In just a moment, the courtyard that was filled with laughter just a moment ago turned into a terrifying azure field of flesh and bones flying. Chapter 459. When the mentors arrived, there were no longer any intact corpses in the courtyard. All the children of the royal family and aristocratic families who stayed in the courtyard were bitten into pieces, their flesh and blood flying everywhere. Among them, the one who died the most miserably was Zhao. At that time, he was sitting in the front, and those students of the intermediate class were all his people, so they were all standing in front of him. The moment the unforeseen event happened, he was torn into pieces in the midst of his screams. Zombie pills. In her previous life, Luo Qingtong was stolen from a terrorist organization. At that time, that organization wanted to capture her to do experiments, but she beat them at their own game and turned them upside down. After Luo Qingtong destroyed the other party's laboratory, she also notified the ex-country's government. Under the joint military force, they directly turned that organization upside down. Luo Qingtong easily took all the resources of that organization and calmly left. That zombie pill was obtained from that organization. Those who took that zombie pill would have their nerve centers cut off, their limbs stiff, their eyes dull, and they completely lose consciousness. The only thing that would be preserved was the order given by the person who gave the pill before their consciousness dissipated. Once triggered, they would fall into a state of madness. All their behavior patterns were the same as the zombies in Resident Evil, except that they weren't infectious. This was originally prepared by that terrorist organization to create panic, but Luo Qingtong used it on those students of the intermediate class. And the trigger that Luo Qingtong set for them was to attack anyone who emitted malicious intent towards her. Didn't those people say that she didn't know how many people wanted to deal with her? Sorry, she didn't need to know, because after today, those people would definitely be reduced by more than half. Luo Qingtong's way of dealing with problems was so simple and crude. Did they find her unpleasant to the eye? Did they want to make trouble for her? Except for a few big heads, she would take care of them herself. Those who followed the royal family of Tianyu and wanted to make trouble for her would all be eliminated by her. She had more important things to do at the Tianyu branch, so she didn't have time to play the childish plot of school bullying with them. Luo Qingtong didn't make a move, but once she made a move, it was shocking. Those who took the zombie pill completely lost their human consciousness and turned into monsters that didn't know pain and death. Their whole body's strength were all strengthened and solidified. After becoming crazy, their strength directly soared. Coupled with the fact that they weren't afraid of death or pain, they instantly made those who had malicious intentions towards Luo Qingtong suffer a nightmarish treatment. In addition to those in the courtyard, those who had malicious intentions towards Luo Qingtong in the entire dormitory area of the entire advanced class would be sensed by the zombified students of the intermediate class and launched an attack. This disaster was only completely stopped when the teachers received the news and rushed over to help. But what had happened, it was irreversible. Almost 1/5 of the students in the advanced class were either dead or severely injured. Even those who didn't die had been traumatized and could no longer fight with others. Most of these people were from the big families and royal families of the Tianyu Empire. With so many students dead, the higher-ups of the academy were furious and ordered to investigate the truth. But what was there to investigate? The students of the intermediate class had all been turned into ashes, okay? Chapter 460. Luo Qingtong took a closer look at Song Cheng's teaching schedule. Song Cheng's teaching schedule was basically arranged for the last class in the afternoon. After a day of classes, all the classes would be over. However, Luo Qingtong looked at Song Cheng's attendance schedule for the first half of the year. Her lips twitched. She was about to ascend to the heavens. What the hell? This Song Cheng was so awesome that he couldn't be any more awesome. Luo Qingtong looked at the pages filled with red XXs, which meant that he didn't attend classes. She didn't know what to say. She calculated. In the entire first half of the year, Song Cheng only attended classes 3 times. In the entire first half of the year, he actually only attended 3 classes. How could such an unprofessional instructor stay in the Tianyu Branch Academy? Luo Qingtong looked at his outrageous attendance, and she was in a bad mood. She entered the lower class to get close to Song Cheng, a weirdo who basically didn't even leave his house. Now, he didn't even attend the classes arranged by the school. How was she going to get close to him and learn the inscription technique from him? Luo Qingtong stared at the red XXs on the page and seriously considered whether she should report this to the school. However, thinking about it, Song Cheng had been in Tianyu Branch School for so long. If he dared to do this, he must have something to rely on. Maybe the school didn't even care about the lower class and just let them fend for themselves. This was troublesome. Luo Qingtong frowned and looked at the schedule in her hand. Tomorrow was the official start of classes. Logically speaking, all the teachers should be present. She would just wait and see. If Song Cheng didn't appear on such an important day tomorrow, she could only change her way of thinking. If she couldn't do it openly, then she could only do it secretly. With that thought, Luo Qingtong put away the schedule. The next day, she brought Yi Qianxian to class. The latter wore a small silver mask that covered half of his face. Although little Mingzun's round face was soft and cute, it was still extraordinarily handsome. This mask was naturally made by Luo Qingtong. Yi Qianxian didn't want to stay in her sleeve pocket, and Luo Qingtong didn't want him to suffocate. However, Supreme Blackfield had never shown his face in front of others. Luo Qingtong didn't want little Mingzun's face to be shown in front of others, so she made a small mask for him. The mask was of the same design as Luo Qingtong's Rakshasa ghost mask, but only half of it covered Yi Qianxian's face. It was half angel and half devil, but it didn't detract from his magnificent beauty. Instead, it made little Nether Venerable, who had a cold face, look even cuter. Luo Qingtong looked at his dignified expression and could not help but hug him and kiss him a few times. Little Nether Venerable glared at her. He couldn't break free from her demonic claws for a long time, so he could only let her do as she wished. This woman is really becoming more and more unreserved. However, although he thought so, his eyes were indescribably bright, and his lips were slightly raised. Luo Qingtong carried Yi Qianxian to the classroom of the lower class. Little Pig was sleeping soundly in her sleeve pocket. She hadn't been able to sleep well these past few days because of Yi Qianren. All right? Luo Qingtong walked into the classroom of the lower class and walked directly to her seat. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly rushed in from outside the classroom. The figure was very fast, and Luo Qingtong was right in front of him. Chapter 461. Seeing his action, Luo Qingtong's eyes turned sharp, and she was ready to take action. Right at this moment, a cursing voice suddenly came in from outside. "Sima Ju, you bastard, how dare you run away?" As soon as the voice came out, Luo Qingtong instantly knew that the figure that rushed in wasn't coming for her. She immediately retracted the power that she was about to use. She hugged little Mingzun and turned around, dodging the figure that rushed over. The man had already noticed Luo Qingtong when he rushed over. However, the distance between them was too close, and he was running in a hurry, so he couldn't stop. When Luo Qingtong dodged, he also staggered forward 2 steps and stopped. When they passed by each other, his hand suddenly brushed against Luo Qingtong's arm. Instantly, Sima Ju's face changed. At the same time, Luo Qingtong also felt that something was wrong with her arm. Her arm, where the young man had brushed against her arm, was stained with a trace of poison. Just a light touch and a rub, and she was infected with such a potent poison? Luo Qingtong felt that the poison was quickly seeping into her limbs and bones. But she couldn't see anything wrong with her hand. Moreover, she didn't feel that the other party had any intention to poison her. With Luo Qingtong's behavior, it was impossible for anyone to poison her silently in front of her, without letting her know. Was it unintentionally stained before he wiped it off just now? What's wrong with him? How could he carry such a strong poison on his body? Luo Qingtong looked up at the young man in front of her. At this glance, she found that the other party's whole body, including his face, was wrapped with a thick layer of cloth, which wrapped him tightly. Only a pair of dark, midnight eyes were exposed. That pair of eyes was extremely dark, and there was no light in the depths of the pupils, as if everything in the world were silent. If you don't want anything to happen, go see a doctor quickly. Turning his head, Sima Ju strode away. He didn't want to see the disgust in the other party's eyes. He had touched her, so she must have been infected with his poison. When she realized that something was wrong with her body, she would curse him in disgust and anger. Sima Ju was already used to it. He was the cursed person. However, it seemed a little different this time. Sima Ju walked all the way to his seat, and didn't hear any movement behind him. He couldn't help but look back, and see that Luo Qingtong had already taken her seat. The poison in her body was gone. Sima Ju looked at Luo Qingtong's arm. The poisonous aura that he could see clearly was gone. Sima Ju was stunned. He looked at Luo Qingtong's arm, and felt an indescribable sense of incredulity. How was this possible? No one knew the power of the poison in his body better than Sima Ju. Just a light touch with others would cause them to be infected with the poison. Even if he had wrapped his whole body with a thick layer of cloth, it couldn't stop the poison that grew stronger as he aged. And those poisons were extremely overbearing. Even if they were cured in time, they would feel uncomfortable for a while. How could the other party be fine? Sima Ju was shocked, but he didn't know that Luo Qingtong's shock was no less than his. 10,000 poison body. Chapter 462. After easily dispelling the poison in her arm, Luo Qingtong used her eye technique to scan Sima Ju's body. She immediately saw the strangeness in his body. This youth's body was actually filled with all kinds of toxins. These toxins were intertwined with each other, forming a strange balance. They wouldn't harm this body, but they could infect anyone who touched him with those toxins. Just some of them were enough to make those with lower strength unable to bear it. Luo Qingtong didn't expect to see this kind of physique here. She had only seen the description of the 10,000 poison body in the ancient records of those evil sects that she had destroyed. She had never seen it before. Legend has it that the 10,000 poison body was extremely powerful. A truly mature 10,000 poison body could extract the toxins in one's body at will, forming all kinds of toxins. Combined with martial skills, it was simply enough to kill anyone who touched it. Fighting above one's level was as easy as eating and drinking. However, it was clear that the youth's 10,000 poison body hadn't matured yet, and he was still unable to control this physique. Luo Qingtong was thinking when Yuan Little Tyrant's loud voice suddenly came from outside the door. F***ck. A bunch of trash. This daddy said that they're not allowed to cause trouble in the lower class. Each and every one of them ignored my words, simply asking for a beating. As he spoke, he cracked his knuckles and entered the classroom. Luo Qingtong saw that behind him, a group of people were limping and supporting each other as they left. It was obvious that they were the group that chased after Sima Ju just now. No wonder they suddenly didn't move. It turned out that they were blocked by Yuan Hu. The latter entered the classroom, looked up and saw Luo Qingtong. He immediately walked over in large strides. Yuan Hu, what are you doing? Sitting next to Luo Qingtong was her roommate Su Xiaoxiao. She looked at Yuan Hu, who was as sturdy as an iron tower, and her heart was timid and afraid. However, she still gathered her courage and stood in front of Luo Qingtong. She said to Yuan Hu, "The tutor will be here soon. You can't randomly hit people anymore. Go away, little white rabbit." Yuan Hu looked at her and rolled his eyes. If he wanted to make a move on them, these people from the lower class wouldn't be enough for him to crush them with one hand. "All right, I won't do anything to her," Yuan Hu said, and pushed away Su Xiaoxiao, who was standing in front of Luo Qingtong. Although he was an overlord, he would not go so far as to bully the weak. He did not use too much strength in this push. "Hey, prick my hand again." He stretched out his hand and said to Luo Qingtong. Yesterday, Yuan Hu went back and thought for a long time, but he still couldn't figure out how Luo Qingtong broke his petrification soul seal defense. Could it be that when he was dealing with those people from the intermediate class, he was ambushed and the petrification soul seal's defense temporarily lost its effect? That must be it. Otherwise, how could the other party break through his defense so easily? Yuan Hu couldn't believe it, especially after the news that almost 1/5 of the advanced class had been wiped out. He was even more convinced of his own conjecture. Those people from the intermediate class were indeed strange. Thinking of this, he immediately came over to find Luo Qingtong to verify. Let's see if the other party could still break through his petrification soul seal defense. Yuan Hu wanted to wash away his shame. He wanted to let this woman know that his petrification soul seal defense was very powerful. Last time she broke through his defense was just a fluke. However, in the face of his words, Luo Qingtong only faintly lifted her eyelids. "I don't have time." She didn't come here to perform a juggling act. If Yuan Hu wanted to jump up and down, that was his business. She had no interest in it. "Hey!" Yuan Hu was immediately angered by her disregard. Just think of how famous his little overlord Yuan was in Tianyu Imperial City. This woman actually didn't give him any face. Chapter 463. You don't have time, right? He snorted coldly and raised his hand to snatch Yi Qianxian. "Then you're mine, little doll. When you're free, you can..." Before Yuan Hu could finish speaking, everyone heard a drawn-out shriek. "My hand!" As Yuan Hu's scream rang out, everyone looked at his hand in unison. However, everyone looked at Yuan Hu, who was holding his unscathed hand and howling miserably. Was little tyrant Yuan practicing his acting skills? His acting was so fake. Everyone looked at his hand that didn't even have a scratch, their faces full of disgust. They thought that his hand had been broken by Luo Qingtong. In the end, everyone's lips twitched. However, no one knew that Yuan Hu was really in pain. Just now, Luo Qingtong stretched out her hand and broke his hand. Then, she quickly fixed it back. It was just that she was too fast and no one saw it. At this moment, the pain of having his bones forcibly broken and reattached was still lingering on his wrist. Coupled with the defense of his petrification soul imprint, the pain of having his bones broken was even worse. That was why he was screaming so miserably. "You!" He looked at Luo Qingtong in shock. The girl only looked up at him coldly, and her voice drifted into his ears. "Don't touch my things again. Yuan Hu, my patience won't always be this good." If not for the fact that Yuan Hu was not a bad person, and had helped her once before, Luo Qingtong would have broken his hand long ago. He really wouldn't change. Previously, he snatched the medicinal liquid she gave Chu Wenhao, and now he wanted to snatch Yi Qianxian. Was Supreme Blackfield so easy to bully? Moreover, it was because of her that Yi Qianren's wisp of soul was imprisoned, and she lost her strength. Luo Qingtong would never allow anyone to lay a finger on him. I know. Yuan Hu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He was really scared this time. His opponent was actually able to ignore his petrification soul seal. One had to know that even a martial king realm expert would not be able to break his hand so easily. What's more, he had the intention of deliberately angering Luo Qingtong. So he raised the defense of the petrification soul seal to the extreme. He didn't expect that it would be so easily broken by Luo Qingtong. And Luo Qingtong's gaze clearly told him that if there was a next time, his punishment would not be so simple. How did she do it? Yuan, who didn't even see how she attacked just now. Luo, boss. I'll call you boss. Tell me, how did you do it? Yuan, who felt as if a cat was scratching his heart. What he was most proud of was his petrification soul seal defense and his innate divine strength. If it weren't for these two things, a martial trash like him would have long disappeared from the imperial capital's Yuan family. Yuan, who was domineering, because he knew that he could only be arrogant and domineering in these few years. Anyway, he was destined to be a trash and would not have any future prospects. Why not take advantage of his current strength to beat up those who looked down on him? Anyway, those people would become more powerful in the future, and they might not let go of a trash like him. He might as well strike first and gain the upper hand, and teach these people a lesson. It would be worth it even if they took revenge on him in the future. With this thought, Yuan, whose temper became so muddled. Those disciples from the aristocratic families in the imperial capital also had a headache and couldn't do anything to him. But this time, he was really beaten into submission by Luo Qingtong. One must know that even when his father, General Yuan, who was at the peak of the martial royal realm, beat him, he had never given in so easily. Chapter 464. Little Tyrant Yuan's demeanor suddenly changed. The crowd, who had no idea what had happened between him and Luo Qingtong, nor did they know what had transpired between them through telepathy, were dumbfounded as they watched Yuan, whose demeanor changed from that of a fiend wanting to teach Luo Qingtong a lesson, to that of a fawning lackey. This scene was simply unbearable to the eyes. Everyone watched as he circled around Luo Qingtong and fawned over her in all sorts of ways. The only thing missing was a tail wagging behind her butt. They suddenly felt that their eyes were damaged today. Otherwise, there must be something wrong with the little tyrant's head. Wasn't this change too big? And so sudden? Could it be that the little tyrant had taken a liking to Luo Qingtong? The people in the lower class naturally did not think that Yuan, who had been subdued by Luo Qingtong. After all, little tyrant Yuan was a weirdo, who could even look down on some of the elite class students. They would never have thought that Luo Qingtong would be able to easily break through his defenses and subdue him. Now he was following behind her and asking for the reason. In their opinion, there was only one possibility for Yuan, whose sudden change, and that was that little tyrant Yuan had taken a liking to Luo Qingtong. Everything that had happened before was to attract Luo Qingtong's attention. For example, pretending that his wrist was injured. Everyone's imagination was very strong. In less than a day, rumors began to spread. The Yuan family's little tyrant Yuan had taken a liking to the fifth prince's fiancée and was desperately pursuing her. Luo Qingtong, however, did not know about this. At this moment, she was frowning as she stood up. That instructor Song Chung had not appeared for the entire day. Looking at the bright red X on the class attendance sheet, Luo Qingtong felt that she had to make a trip to instructor Song Cheng's dormitory. Although, according to the information, he had never met anyone. How would she know if she did not try? Luo Qingtong casually prepared a few questions on miscellaneous subjects and directly left the classroom, heading towards the instructor's dormitory. Little Overlord Yuan originally wanted to keep up, but was easily shaken off by Luo Qingtong halfway. I would like to meet teacher Song Chung and ask him a few questions. In the mentor's dormitory area, Luo Qingtong showed her student certificate of the lower class and explained her intentions. The guards who were in charge of guarding outside the mentor's dormitory had strange expressions on their faces. This was the first time they had seen a student from a lower class come to ask a teacher a question. If this student had come to look for a martial arts instructor or a cultivation method instructor, it would have been fine. This meant that this student was motivated to improve himself. Even if he was in the trash class, he wouldn't be able to hide his intentions. But to ask a miscellaneous subject teacher a question, everyone's heart went into Spartan mode, thinking that there was probably something wrong with this student's brain. The so-called miscellaneous studies were actually all kinds of miscellaneous things. It was fine to learn these things, but it was also fine to not learn them. There were even students who came to ask questions. Moreover, he was a student from the trash class. With a strange expression, the guard asked Luo Qingtong to wait while he went inside to inquire. Luo Qingtong waited outside, her gaze sweeping over the defense of the mentor's dormitory area. Unlike the students' dormitory area, the management and defense of the mentor's dormitory area were very strict. After all, students needed to learn from each other and get to know each other at any time, but the mentors could not be casually disturbed. If one wanted to see a mentor, they had to get the mentor's permission. They could not just barge in without permission. It was the same for the mentors. Before visiting, they had to inform the mentors. Luo Qingtong swept a glance over the defense of the mentor's dormitory area. Very quickly, she understood the way to break through it. If Song Chung was really unwilling to see her, then she could only do it secretly. Chapter 465. At the same time, in Song Cheng's dormitory, a person who was almost impossible to appear here was currently standing there with a respectful expression, looking at the old man who was sitting on the rattan chair with his eyes closed in meditation. The dean of Tanyu Branch Academy. If there were any teachers or students of Tanyu Branch Academy here, they would discover. The middle-aged man who was looking at the old man respectfully was the dean of Tanyu Branch Academy. A peak martial emperor expert had a very high status in the Tanyu Empire. Tanyu's royal family and various aristocratic families competed to be on good terms with him. At this moment the dean, who could do whatever he wanted in the Tanyu Empire, and was the ruler of Tanyu Branch Academy, was standing respectfully in front of Song Chung. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. After a while, he cautiously called out Elder Song. Humph. Song Chung, who had been ignoring him, opened his eyes. You're too ambitious. You want to open the Tianyang secret realm. That was the training ground for the various factions of the Sacred Dynasty, including the headquarters of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin. Only saints could open it. The difference between the students of Tanyu Branch Academy and the students of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin didn't need to be explained. Under such circumstances, the dean of Tanyu Branch Academy came looking for him to open the Tianyang secret realm for the students of Tanyu Branch Academy to train. Was he crazy? Although one's strength would increase quickly, it was also very dangerous. Many people from the various factions of the Sacred Dynasty and the students of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin would die every time they entered, not to mention the Tanyu Branch Academy. Elder Song, I know this is very difficult for you, but the grand event of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin is about to start, and I want to give it a try. I hope that Elder Song can help me this time on account of our many years of friendship. The dean of Tanyu Branch Academy said humbly. In front of Song Chung, he didn't dare to show any arrogance. The origin of this old man was a mystery, and his strength was unfathomable. Back then, when he came to the Tanyu Branch Academy, he requested that he hide his identity and arrange for him to be a low-level miscellaneous subject instructor. The headmaster of the Tanyu Branch Academy did as he asked. Usually, no one dared to disturb him. It was just that the temptation this time was too great, so they couldn't help but beg him to help. If the students of the Tanyu Branch College could really make a name for themselves during the grand event of the Empire of Qin's Sane Academy, then it would be a great honor for both him and the Tanyu Branch College. No matter what, he had to fight for it. And the opportunity to fight for this opportunity lay with Song Chung. The dean of the Tanyu Branch School didn't know how strong the other party was, but it was definitely above the Saint realm. Humph, Song Chung snorted. All right, I owe you a favor for coming to the Tanyu Branch Academy. Now that you've come to beg me, I'll help you once. But remember, I will only attack once. In the future, if anything happens in Tanyu Branch, don't come looking for me. Song Chung had to say the ugly words first, lest these people keep on pestering him, thinking that he was someone they could just casually ask for whatever they wanted. The reason he chose to stay in the Tanyu Branch Academy was because it was convenient. It wasn't that he had to go to the Tanyu Branch Academy. Hearing his words, the dean of the Tanyu Branch Academy was overjoyed. He nodded repeatedly and promised that he wouldn't bother him again in the future. Only then did he leave happily. Chapter 466. A student from the lower class? She wants to ask me some questions. Tell her that I'm busy. Songqing felt strange. Why did he insist on being a teacher of miscellaneous subjects in the lower class? It was because he wanted to be able to live his life without worrying about anything. He didn't have enough time to study inscriptions every day. He didn't have time to teach students. Songqing rejected him without thinking, and continued to immerse himself in his inscription experiments. He had an inscription pattern, and was about to figure out a clue. He was extremely busy right now. When the dean of Tianyu branch came, he almost kicked him out of the door, let alone a student who came to ask him some questions about miscellaneous subjects. Luo Qingtong wasn't surprised at all when she heard the guard's reply. She already knew what kind of weirdo Songqing was from the information she got. From the looks of it, the other party's obsession with inscriptions wasn't ordinary at all. However, she had already achieved half of her purpose in coming to the teacher's dormitory. Luo Qingtong looked at the defense of the mentor's dormitory area several times, and she was almost done deciphering it. She smiled and thanked the guard before leaving with little Mingzun. At this time, Little Pig also woke up. He rubbed his eyes with his little hoof and jumped onto Luo Qingtong's shoulder. He asked, "You're leaving just like that? You don't care about that teacher anymore? What if he doesn't come to class in the future? Are you going to give up just like that?" "Of course not." Luo Qingtong glanced at him. Give up? She came to the lower class to learn inscription techniques. How could she give up? However, this Songqing was really difficult to deal with. Even if he didn't want to see her, couldn't she just barge in? "Let's go. We'll come again tonight." Swoosh. It was nighttime. The stars and the moon dispersed, and the shadows of the trees flashed. Luo Qingtong's figure flashed through Tianyu branch, and soon approached the teacher's dormitory. Tianyu branch's defense and management at night were very strict. However, compared to the outside of the school, the patrols inside the school were much looser. After all, the students and teachers who could enter the school were trustworthy to a certain extent. The reason why they still had to patrol and defend was to deal with some rare emergencies. Luo Qingtong's figure easily swept past the defense of the teacher's dormitory area. She quickly flew towards the courtyard of Songqing's dormitory that she had seen at the entrance this afternoon. That's right. All the instructors had their own dormitories and courtyards. They didn't need to share a room with others. At the same time, it also made things easier for Luo Qingtong. Earlier in the afternoon, Xiao Chun had already memorized the defensive layout of this place. She did not encounter any obstacles as she approached the courtyard of Songqing's dormitory. However, just as she stepped into the courtyard, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly narrowed. Ninefold formation. Beneath her feet, rays of array formation light suddenly rose up and enveloped her body. Ninefold formation, as its name implied, was a formation within a formation that used 9 as the number of folds. This was something that only an array grandmaster, who had studied array formations to the extreme, could do. Not only that, only an expert of the Sage realm could provide the huge amount of energy needed to set up the ninefold formation's defense. So far, the strongest array formation that Luo Qingtong could set up was the fivefold formation. It was not because her ability to set up array formations was not good enough, but because her strength was not enough to support a more advanced array formation. Chapter 467. *T. Who would have thought? In the dormitory courtyard of a low-class miscellaneous course instructor, there was actually a hidden ninefold formation, which could only be activated by a Saint Realm expert. You must be joking, right? Luo Qingtong didn't dare to hesitate. The bloody light in her eyes intensified. In an instant, her clear and limpid eyes turned blood red. Under the contrast of the blood red color, Luo Qingtong's beautiful face instantly became incomparably demonic. That was a demonic beauty that no one could compare to. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's body completely bloomed. Like a bloodthirsty demonic flower, the peerless beauty was revealed in an instant. Swish, swish, swish. Luo Qingtong's figure swept through the layers of formations. Her swirling skirt was like blood-red flower petals, spreading out layer by layer. Under such circumstances, she broke through the layers of formations one by one. The ninefold formation was set up by 9 levels. According to the technique and energy of the person who set up the formation, 99, or even 999 variations of the formation, Luo Qingtong broke through nearly half of the formation. Song Cheng, who was originally doing experiments in his room and didn't intend to come out, suddenly exclaimed softly when he sensed the situation in the formation. The formation outside wasn't set up by himself. Instead, it was a formation frisbee that he obtained from an old friend. After injecting his aura, he could activate the formation inside. He placed it in his dormitory because he didn't want to be disturbed by unnecessary people. Considering that this was an academy, the formation's offensive power was turned off. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong wouldn't have been able to break through it so easily. When the energy of a Saint Realm expert was injected into it, even if she could dodge, a light scratch would be enough to make her vomit blood. Seeing Luo Qingtong break through several layers of the formation like a hot knife through butter, and was already very close to the periphery of the formation. Soon she would break through the formation. Even Song Cheng, who was immersed in inscription techniques, couldn't help but divert a bit of his attention. Especially after discovering that Luo Qingtong's strength wasn't strong, he was even more surprised. This is a rare good seedling. Her strength was not strong, which meant that she did not rely on external forces to break the array, but her own understanding of the array. This meant that the other party was extremely talented in setting up formations. Song Cheng thought of his old friend. Wasn't he always complaining that he couldn't find a good disciple? Wasn't there a suitable one? With that thought in mind, Song Cheng finally pulled himself out from his inscription experiment. Whoosh! As he raised his hand, the light of the array formation enveloping Luo Qingtong instantly disappeared. She herself also appeared in the hall. Which class are you from? Song Cheng appeared, sizing up the young girl who had intruded into his mansion in the middle of the night. He had no doubt that Luo Qingtong was not a student of Tianyu Academy. Even if it was just a branch of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin, it was not easy for others to enter and leave the Tianyu branch. Moreover, he had set up the formation. If the other party didn't have the aura of the Tianyu branch's nameplate, he would have already started attacking. Song Cheng didn't care how this little fellow came to his dormitory. Right now, he was wholeheartedly focused on taking in a disciple for his old friend. He immediately looked up and down, and was very satisfied with Luo Qingtong. Yes, your aptitude is not bad. Above the sage realm, one could understand the laws of heaven and earth. Song Cheng saw through Luo Qingtong's hidden cultivation at a glance. He found that this young girl was already at the 9th stage of the great martial general realm, at such a young age, and could advance to the martial marquis realm at any time. He immediately nodded in satisfaction. This aptitude was not bad, although it couldn't be compared to those. But her talent in setting up formations was something that others couldn't compare to. 9-layered formation. She could actually handle it with ease. Not bad. Very good. Chapter 468. Before coming here, Luo Qingtong had imagined countless scenarios, but none of them were compatible with the current situation. First, she encountered the ninefold formation with the aura of the Sage Realm. Now, this instructor Song Cheng wanted to accept her as a disciple on behalf of his friend after casually asking her which class she was from. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched. I'm sorry, Instructor Song Cheng. I'm not interested in becoming someone else's disciple. I came here this time to learn the inscription technique from you. Song Cheng originally looked at Luo Qingtong as if she was an old friend's disciple. However, after hearing her words, he suddenly changed his expression. Inscription technique? He looked at Luo Qingtong coldly. Who did you hear that from? The old man who was smiling and nodding his head while praising her seemed to be Luo Qingtong's illusion. At this moment, Song Cheng had turned into an expressionless old man with a strange temper. I don't know any inscription technique. If you don't want to be my friend's disciple, you can get lost now. Song Chung hated it when people used inscription techniques to tease him. In the past, there were students who came to him and said that they wanted to learn inscription techniques from him. However, they treated him as a joke behind his back and mocked him wantonly. Now that he heard someone say that they wanted to learn inscription techniques from him, he couldn't help but flip out. Get lost. As he spoke, he waved his sleeves fiercely and was about to drive Luo Qingtong out of his dormitory. Inside the sleeve, little Ming Zun's eyes flashed when he felt the movement outside. He was about to rush out, but Luo Qingtong raised her hand and stopped him through the sleeve. Song Cheng's identity was unknown. Luo Qingtong didn't know if he would cause harm to Yi Qianxian. If this wisp of soul dissipated, Yi Qianxian's strength would definitely be affected. No matter how much Luo Qingtong wanted to trick Yi Qianxian, she wasn't willing to let him get hurt because of her. Therefore, she stopped him immediately. It's okay. She quickly transmitted her voice and then suddenly raised her voice. Instructor Song Chung, a true Sumeru spatial spiritual tool can cut through space, gather spirit springs, and even create a small world. Everything above is due to the power of inscriptions. It can also enhance the sharpness of weapons, the efficacy of pills, and the potential of the human body. You really don't know the inscription technique? Or is it that you don't want it to flourish in your hands, and you don't want others to know that everything you've done is right? Luo Qingtong's voice was sonorous and powerful, and it resounded in the hall. Swoosh! Song Chung stopped in his tracks. With a wave of his hand, Luo Qingtong's figure, which was about to disappear from the hall, was instantly pulled back by him. You seem to know quite a lot. He coldly snorted and looked her up and down. He had to admit that Luo Qingtong's words had indeed moved him. Song Chung had researched inscriptions for dozens of years. He gave up his original status and hid his strength in Tianyu Branch Academy. Wasn't it all for the sake of proving that he was right one day? You really believe in the existence of the inscription technique? He squinted his eyes and looked at Luo Qingtong. What was there to believe? She still had a pile of inscription technique manuals in her hands. It was just that they were too profound, and she couldn't understand them. She had to learn them first. I believe. Luo Qingtong looked at him and nodded. If I didn't believe, I wouldn't have said so much. Isn't that right, Instructor Song Ching? Luo Qingtong smiled and looked at him. From the moment Song Chung pulled her back, she knew that she had succeeded. Chapter 469. Empty words with no proof. If you want to understand these things, you can still find out a thing or two. Song Chung was not so easy to fool. The main reason was that when he was passionate about teaching disciples, he was hurt too deeply. Now it seemed that everyone was teasing him and mocking him. However, Luo Qingtong's words had indeed moved him. He was willing to give her a chance. Since you want to learn inscriptions so much. Sure. 3 days later, the academy will hold a competition for the reward for the top new student. At that time, 10 weapons will be taken out. I will add in an inscription tool that I have drawn. If you can find it and snatch it, I will believe that you really want to learn inscription techniques. Otherwise, go where you want to go in the future and don't bother me. How about it? Song Chung raised his head and looked at Luo Qingtong. He had an expression that said, if you can't even meet such a request, then get lost. He was not worried that Luo Qingtong would not be the top new student. The other party was obviously a new face, and was so powerful. Among the new students, no one could beat her. No matter where she came from, she would definitely be the top student. Okay. Luo Qingtong looked at him and smiled. However, I also have a request. She looked at Song Chung and said, if I meet your request, I will only learn inscription techniques and will not take you as my master. Luo Qingtong set this condition first. She did not want to take someone else as her master. One accident like Tian Mingzi was enough. There was no need for a second one. You wish. You want to take me as your master. But I don't want to take you as my disciple. Song Chung snorted. At this time, he still did not know that he would beat his feet and beat his chest because of this sentence in the future. He wished that he could go back in time and eat these words back. A good disciple that he had gotten. He had lost her just like that. In the end, He could not get her back no matter how hard he tried. It really made people sad and cry. Okay, then this matter is settled. You can go now. After speaking, Song Chung waved his sleeves and sent Luo Qingtong out. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched as she stood in the hallway of the mentor's dormitory. Instructor, since you've already sent me out, can't you send me a little further away, and at least let me leave the instructor's dormitory? Fortunately, no one bumped into her. Otherwise, she would be charged with breaking into the instructor's dormitory at night. She would not be able to participate in the competition for the top prize of the freshmen 3 days later. However, Luo Qingtong had not expected Song Chung to be so strong. Fortunately, she had not thought of using force. Otherwise, not only would he fail to learn the inscription pattern technique, but he would also inexplicably provoke a Sage Realm enemy. Luo Qingtong patted her chest and leaped out of the instructor's dormitory. Why didn't you let me out earlier? When she left the mentor's dormitory, Yi Qianxian crawled out from her sleeve. He's an expert above the Sage Realm. It's very likely that he will hurt you. Yi Qianxian looked at her with a frown. Luo Qingtong hugged him and kissed him on the lips. You also know that he's an expert above the Sage Realm. What if he knows you? You're just a divided soul now. Don't always act like a high lord. If you're caught by someone and your soul is refined or something like that, your original body will also suffer. Luo Qingtong knew that in this world, there were many methods to deal with souls. She did not understand the realms above the Sage Realm, nor did she know what methods they used. However, she knew that if this divided soul of Yi Qianxian fell into the hands of someone who had a grudge against him, it would cause great harm to him through this divided soul. Since she had imprisoned this divided soul of Yi Qianxian, she had the responsibility to protect him. Chapter 470. Humph. Little Mingzun looked at her and snorted proudly. I'm not as weak as you think. Others want to capture a wisp of this sovereign soul? Dream on. It wasn't that he couldn't break free from the shackles of the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood. It was just that he might hurt the woman who was connected to the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood. Did this woman really think that he was that weak? As for his original body, even if his meridians were severely injured, and he only had 30 to 40% of his strength left, there weren't many experts on this continent who could hurt him. This woman loved to worry for nothing. Although he thought so, Yi Qianxian liked the feeling of being cared for by Luo Qingtong. Yes, yes, yes. You're the best in the world. Luo Qingtong couldn't help but laugh. Little Mingzun's arrogant and narcissistic look was too cute. Was Yi Qianxian like this when he was young? Luo Qingtong imagined it, and thought of that man chasing after her with a black face. She couldn't help but laugh. If Yi Qianxian knew that his divided soul had such a dark history after being imprisoned, would he be so angry that he would vomit blood? He would probably spend more money to chase after her. But she didn't regret it at all. It'll be great if you can stay by my side in the future. It didn't matter if it was like this now. Luo Qingtong looked at little Mingzun with curved eyes, and leaned over to peck his lips. Then I can hide you forever. Yi Qianxian now belonged to her alone. Humph. Yi Qianxian snorted and didn't argue with this woman. Anyway, she felt that the original body wouldn't let her go after catching her. It was useless for her to say anything. Let her think so. It'll be fine when the original body comes. But then again, why did the original body take so long to investigate the wisp of Holy Brush Spirit? Was there an accident? And the Holy Brush Spirit wasn't in the Holy Court of the Empire of Qin? The divided soul had all the thoughts of the original body. Every move was no different from the original body. In an instant, little Mingzun understood the reason for the accident. At the same time outside the clouds, blood stained the yellow sand, bones in the forest, and the sound of fighting was endless. The sound of blades, bloody frost, and mournful screams were endless. Numerous powerhouses from all over the True Spill continent had gathered in this mystic realm. For the sake of the treasures that had appeared in this world, they would fight each other to the death, turning this place into a bloody slaughterhouse. The battlefield closest to the outskirts of the outside the clouds had just ended. The victorious parties supported each other and were about to leave. At this moment, On the peak of a distant mountain, at the entrance of the land beyond the clouds, a whirlpool suddenly appeared. Someone else is coming. The group of powerhouses looked warily at the entrance. Of them, Dark Venerable, looking at the silver-robed, black-haired, golden-masked man who jumped down from the top of the mountain like a god, the group of powerhouses were all stunned. The man wore a silver robe with golden embroidery. In the dark he was noble and extraordinary. His aura was overbearing and difficult to describe. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from everyone's sight with the Dark Regions group, leaving them standing there in shock. The Supreme of the Black Field had also come to the outside the clouds. Didn't he never participate in the fight for the treasures that had appeared? However, they didn't know that Yi Qianxian was here for the treasures in his heart. Luo Qi, this time, I won't give you a chance to escape. Chapter 471. Luo Qingtong brought little Ming Zun back to the dormitory of the lower class. Just as they passed through an aisle of Tianyu Branch Academy, they suddenly heard a muffled roar from the dark woods. Depression, despair, resentment. The smell of death spread. Luo Qingtong's senses were sharp. She turned to look at the woods. Immediately, she saw a person lying on the ground. On the other side, a young man was leaning against a big tree panting. Noticing Luo Qingtong's gaze, the young man suddenly raised his head and looked at her fiercely. His pair of eyes that were as silent and oppressive as midnight were now filled with hatred, despair, and killing intent. He was seen. Sima Ju looked at Luo Qingtong fiercely. The killing intent in his heart was overwhelming. At that moment, he wanted to kill Luo Qingtong who had seen him kill people. But soon, the killing intent in his eyes disappeared. With his current body, it was impossible to kill people. Not to mention, the other party was not afraid of the poison in his body. Call for help if you want. He looked at Luo Qingtong indifferently. Then he looked away. It didn't matter if he was expelled from the academy or killed by revenge. Anyway, his cursed body couldn't live for long. He was reaching his limit. Sima Ju lowered his head and looked at the black skin exposed by the torn cloth. Compared to before, it was darker. The darker the color, the stronger the poison accumulated in his body, and the stronger the backlash against him. Now he was gradually unable to resist the invasion of the poison. Anyway, he was going to die. It didn't matter how he died. Luo Qingtong glanced at the person lying on the ground. She recognized that he was the leader of the group that chased Sima Ju during the day. She didn't expect that he would come to find trouble with the other party at night and lose his life. Not interested. She looked indifferent. Then, she raised her hand and threw a bottle over. Corpse dissolving liquid. If you have nothing to do, clean up the body. Don't let people find out. Why? Sima Ju was ready to close his eyes and wait for death. But suddenly, he heard Luo Qingtong say so. He opened his eyes and saw the bottle of corpse dissolving liquid thrown at him. He immediately reached out and caught it. That pair of deep and silent eyes stared at Luo Qingtong. What do you want? Why did she help him cover up the fact that he killed people? He and she didn't have any friendship at all, wasn't it? In fact, the matter of Sima Ju being killed in the advanced class could be solved. But after thinking about it, Luo Qingtong felt that the other party's body of all poisons was very valuable. This was the first time she had seen such a heaven-defying physique. She really wanted to know what kind of terrifying strength the 10,000 poisons body would possess once it was controlled and erupted. Of all, Xianju had always liked to. Just think of it as for your body. Luo Qingtong looked at him and said, I'm very interested in your body. Before she finished speaking, Sima Ju had already taken a big step back. He looked at her with resentment and shame. Don't even think about it. Luo Qingtong looked at him unhappily. I'm talking about the poison in your body. Who took a fancy to his body? If anyone took a fancy to it, it should be Yi Qianxian, okay? Chapter 472. 10,000 Poison Body. Luo Qingtong looked at Sima Ju with narrowed eyes. Your physique is very special. I'm very interested in it. If you're willing, I can help you control the poison in your body and solve the hidden dangers in your body. But the price is that you'll sell yourself to me in the future and listen to my orders. If you can accept it, then come and find me. If you can't, then pretend I didn't say anything." As she spoke, she turned around and left. Luo Qingtang wasn't a saint. She would help the other party, but the other party had to pay the price. Luo Qingtang didn't need Sima Ju to recognize her as his master. But he had to guarantee that he wouldn't harm her. Only when the blade was in one's own hands could it be sharpened. Otherwise, why would she cut the other party's blade? No matter how curious Luo Qingtang was, no matter how interested she was in the 10,000 poison body, she wouldn't cross this bottom line. Of course, Yi Qianxian was the only exception. Treating his meridians was a huge loss for her. Swish! Luo Qingtang's figure disappeared in front of Sima Ju. Looking at the faintly discernible figure that disappeared like smoke, the youth standing under the tree clenched the bottle of corpse-dissolving liquid in his hand. "Luo Qingtang," he muttered the other party's name in a low voice. That pair of eyes that were as still as the midnight sky suddenly burst forth with infinite hope and brilliance. The other party said that she could cure his cursed physique. So, he wasn't some devil, but had a special physique? 10,000 poison body. So there was actually a possibility of him being cured? Sima Ju's heart was beating fast. At this time, the youth still didn't know what this night meant to him. When the name of 10,000 poison sovereign followed in the footsteps of Luo Qingtang and spread to every place they went, causing countless people to be shocked, no one would have thought that the weak and gloomy youth would have such a day. Furthermore, no one knew that he had once stood on the edge of the abyss, just one step away from eternal damnation. It was Luo Qingtang who pulled him out and gave him a completely different new life, allowing him to stand above everyone. Whoosh! Luo Qingtang rushed back to the dormitory. Her roommate Su Xiaoxiao was still awake. She was fiddling with something. When Luo Qingtang passed by her room, she suddenly smelled the fragrance of medicine. Su Xiaoxiao was refining medicine? Luo Qingtang was slightly surprised. He didn't expect Su Xiaoxiao to be an alchemist. But isn't this kind of class very popular? How could the mentors of the pharmacy let her go? No matter what, he had to get her into the advanced class. For those with special talents, the lowest starting point would be the advanced class. If they were more talented, they would be in the elite class. After all, there were too few people who had the talent for medicine masters, spirit array masters, and weapon refiners. How could Su Xiaoxiao be assigned to the trash class? Luo Qingtang was surprised. She smelled the fragrant scent and instantly analyzed the medicinal properties of this bottle of liquid in her mind. What surprised her was that the medicinal properties of this liquid refined by Su Xiaoxiao were very stable. It was so stable that Luo Qingtang was surprised. There was almost no fluctuation, very stable. This stability meant that as long as the medicinal liquid was formed, no matter what kind of mistakes occurred, it wouldn't fail again. The effect of the medicinal liquid would also be very good. How could such a talented alchemist be assigned to the trash class? Chapter 473. Luo Qingtang. Seeing Luo Qingtang standing outside, Su Xiaoxiao, who was walking out with a disappointed expression, jumped in fright. She was a little uneasy as she dodged to the side. "That you want to enter?" Before she could finish her sentence, she suddenly realized that this was her room, not Luo Qingtang's. She immediately blushed. Looking at the girl in front of her, who was as nervous and helpless as a little white rabbit, Luo Qingtang couldn't help but laugh. "You're refining medicine?" She looked into her room. In the middle of the big desk, there were some auxiliary tools for refining medicine. Su Xiaoxiao nodded lightly, then said with a lonely face, "Unfortunately, I failed again." "Failed again?" Hearing this, Luo Qingtang looked at her in surprise. "Didn't you already succeed?" She could already smell the medicinal fragrance. "I failed." Su Xiaoxiao stood in front of Luo Qingtang, her head drooping. It looked as if there were invisible velvet ears hanging down from the top of her head. She said very dejectedly, "The quality was lowered again." As she said this, her eyes were filled with tears. Clearly, she had already worked very hard. She didn't know why, but she just kept failing. Su Xiaoxiao also didn't know why. They were both pharmacists, and the instructor also praised her talent. However, every time she concocted a medicinal liquid, not only did she spend several times more time than other people, the grade of the same medicinal liquid she concocted was also several times lower than other people's. No matter how she tried, it was like this. If it weren't for this, she wouldn't have been assigned to the trash class. Thinking like this, Su Xiaoxiao's heart was very sad. Luo Qingtong looked at her and was even more surprised. Take out your medicine for me to see. The stability of the medicine she just sensed was second only to her. Luo Qingtong didn't understand what Su Xiaoxiao meant by the low quality. But soon she knew. She looked at the bottle of medicine Su Xiaoxiao took out and carefully sensed it. Yellow ranked 2nd grade heart marrow liquid? This heart marrow liquid, shouldn't it be yellow ranked 4th grade? Could it be that she remembered wrongly? That's impossible. Luo Qingtong remembered the instructor talking about it in class today. She even took the opportunity to cram in some knowledge about this world's medicine that she didn't know before. Su Xiaoxiao's eyes started glistening with tears again. I followed the instructor's instructions in the morning, and lowered the quality again, to be able to refine a 4th grade medicinal liquid into a 2nd grade medicinal liquid. Su Xiaoxiao could be regarded as a prodigy that no one had ever done before. One had to know that the grade of the medicinal liquid was set at the very beginning, and it was impossible to change it. At most, the concentration of the medicinal properties of the medicinal liquid was different, and it was divided into 4 levels: low level, middle level, and high level. Su Xiaoxiao directly refined the other party 2 grades lower. This was really exploding, but Luo Qingtong frowned as she looked at the medicine in her hand. Although it had dropped from a 4th grade to a 2nd grade, Luo Qingtong sensed that there wasn't any change in the medicinal properties of the medicine, and it was obviously more stable than a normal 4th grade heart marrow liquid. In other words, other than the lower grade, this bottle of medicine was no different from a 4th grade heart marrow liquid. It was even better. But the medicinal properties were reduced by half. This was the first time Luo Qingtong saw such a strange situation. How did Su Xiaoxiao refine medicine? Chapter 474. That's how I refined it. I did it exactly as the instructor instructed. Su Xiaoxiao wiped the tears from her eyes and said, "But I don't know why, but I just didn't do it right. Maybe I'm too stupid," she said with a desolate expression. She really did follow the instructor's instructions. Little Pig whispered to Luo Qingtong, "But this girl is really too weird. She fiddled with this bottle of heart marrow solution for almost 2 hours. Do you know that? Most people only take an hour to refine this medicine." Su Xiaoxiao actually tripled the time required. Not only that, but the effect of the medicine was also reduced by 2 times. Don't you think this is a scam? She took a long time to refine, and the effect of the medicine was low. No wonder she was assigned to the trash class. However, Su Xiaoxiao's talent in refining medicine was top-notch. The instructor only mentioned this medicine today, and he only casually demonstrated it, but she came back and refined it. Her talent was already top-notch among the alchemists. If she could raise her refining level in the future, she would definitely become an alchemist grandmaster. But damn it, her refining ability was really bad. She was basically incurable. Little Pig didn't go out with Luo Qingtong tonight. He stayed in the dormitory and knew everything about Su Xiaoxiao's refining process. He had never seen an alchemist like Su Xiaoxiao, whose refining ability was so bad. It was as if the medicinal liquid in her hands had been cursed, making people speechless. Luo Qingtong looked at the medicine in her hands, and then looked at the tears on Su Xiaoxiao's face. She suddenly asked, "Then are you going to give up?" "No." Su Xiaoxiao wiped the tears off her face. "I like refining medicine. Moreover, the instructors said that my talent in refining medicine is very good. I believe that as long as I persevere, I can do it. Anyway, it's just taking a little longer to refine than others, and the quality is lower than others. At worst, I'll work harder and raise my refining level. Even if I can't compare with other alchemists, I won't necessarily be worse than others," she said firmly. "Yes." Luo Qingtong looked at her, and her gaze softened. When she saw Su Xiaoxiao, She felt as if she was looking at her when she first activated her special ability. At that time, she didn't know how to use her eye technique, and was hunted down by others. That was what she told herself. Even if her ocular sorcery could only be used as an auxiliary power, and could not help her improve her strength at all, she would never give up and bow down to anyone. He would never become someone else's puppet. In the end, her ocular ability erupted and completely crushed the other ability users. She immediately launched a counterattack against the forces that had pursued her before. Luo Qingtang had always believed that as long as you refused to give up on yourself, no one in this world would be able to give up on you. Not even the heavens. I think you can think of it differently. She lowered her eyes and said to Su Xiaoxiao, "Your talent in alchemy is very good, and the medicinal properties of the medicinal liquid you refine are also very stable. Why must you adhere to the formula of the medicine taught by the instructors? If the methods in this world don't suit you, then create a path that suits you. In this world, the reason why geniuses are lonely, and the reason why the strong are lonely, that's because the path they walk can't be replicated by others. Su Xiaoxiao, you can definitely walk your own path." Chapter 475. Luo Qingtang poured out the second-grade yellow-grade heart marrow fluid. Ah! Seeing her actions, Su Xiaoxiao couldn't help but cry out. In the next second she suddenly covered her mouth, because in her line of sight, the medicinal fluid that flowed out of the jade bottle was caught by Luo Qingtang. The young girl's hands seemed to have magic. She held the ball of medicinal fluid and kneaded it, making it stay in her palms. Her movements were like moving clouds and flowing water. It was so beautiful that it looked like she was playing. However, Su Xiaoxiao knew that to be able to lift something so heavy with such ease, one needed to have a shocking alchemy ability. The refinement, extraction, and even condensation of medicinal materials required the cooperation of specialized tools. It wasn't impossible to be like Luo Qingtang and control the medicinal fluid with just the strength in her palms. However, one needed extremely precise control over the medicinal properties and flow of the medicinal fluid. Otherwise, if one used too much strength, it would be easy to crush the medicinal fluid. If one used too little strength, they wouldn't be able to control the medicinal fluid and could only let it flow to the ground. Luo Qingtang's actions were already comparable to that of a heavenly alchemist. Only when one understood the various steps and medicinal properties of refining medicine by heart, and at the same time, had superb alchemy ability, could they control these medicinal fluids. But now, in front of Su Xiaoxiao, Luo Qingtang just casually squeezed and held the medicinal fluid. That was fine. Su Xiaoxiao then watched as Luo Qingtang took out a few stalks of medicinal materials. Su Xiaoxiao couldn't recognize those medicinal materials, but she could feel that the medicinal properties on them were very rich. It was very obvious that these medicinal materials weren't ordinary goods. The quality of the medicinal fluid you refined is low, so you can make up for it from other places. Luo Qingtang looked at her and said indifferently. What she said to Su Xiaoxiao was something that ordinary alchemists wouldn't think of and definitely wouldn't do. The heart marrow liquid is a grade 2 medicinal liquid. What if I add in a higher grade medicinal liquid that won't affect the compatibility of the medicinal properties? As she spoke, she held the ball of heart marrow liquid in her right hand and a stalk of medicinal herb in her left. She kneaded and squeezed it, and the stalk of medicinal herb turned into a ball of sparkling green medicinal energy. Luo Qingtang suddenly clasped her hands together. Ah, no way. If so, it will. Su Xiaoxiao's words were only half spoken, and she stopped instantly. She opened her mouth wide in disbelief as she stared at the medicinal liquid in front of her. It hadn't been scrapped, nor had there been any changes to its medicinal properties. After this ball of medicinal liquid merged with the ball of medicinal energy, its quality had increased. Su Xiaoxiao covered her mouth as she stared at the grade 4 heart marrow fluid in front of her. Large droplets of tears fell from her eyes. Level 4 heart marrow fluid. She stared at the heart marrow fluid in Luo Qingtang's hand in disbelief. Advanced 4th rank. How was this possible? Luo Qingtang had casually added in a stalk of medicinal herb, and it actually increased the quality of the heart marrow fluid? So, it could be done in this way? If this was the case, then wouldn't she no longer have to bear the title of a useless alchemist in the future? Su Xiaoxiao's heart was filled with excitement at this moment. She stared at the medicinal liquid in Luo Qingtong's hand in shock, and almost couldn't believe her eyes. What Luo Qingtong had done had completely overturned all the theories she had about alchemy in her mind. The formula of a medicinal liquid definitely couldn't be changed casually. Once the medicinal liquid had been refined, other medicinal herbs and liquids could not be added. Chapter 476. Medicinal power and medicinal power can fuse together before, can reinforce each other, can restrain each other. Why can't there be no reaction? Luo Qingtong's voice resounded in her ears. Xiao Xiao, what you need to do is to find high-level medicinal materials that won't have any reaction with the medicinal materials in the medicinal liquid you want to refine. Add them to the medicinal liquid you want to refine, and improve its quality. If you want to succeed, if you want to improve yourself, don't take the ordinary path. Because you have to always believe that we aren't ordinary people. We are destined to stand at the peak. When Luo Qingtong used her eye technique to see through everything to kill people for the first time, she also told herself this. In this world, there was nothing that couldn't be changed. It's just that we didn't think of it, and didn't want to change it. Who said that trash had to accept their fate? Without a strong attack power, even if I relied on my auxiliary ability, I could still play you to death. The only thing that could stop us from moving forward and standing at the peak was never an external obstacle, but ourselves. Qingtong, thank you, thank you. Su Xiaoxiao was so happy that she wept. Luo Qingtong's words opened the door to another world for her. She didn't want to give up and finally saw hope. I will definitely become the most powerful alchemist. Qingtong, I want to become your personal alchemist, she said excitedly, hugging Luo Qingtong's hand so tightly that it was about to jump up. But soon, she remembered that Luo Qingtong's alchemy skills were much better than hers. She didn't need a personal alchemist like her at all. All of a sudden, the invisible velvet ears on Su Xiaoxiao's head were about to droop down. She was indescribably disappointed in her heart. Besides alchemy, what else could she help Luo Qingtong with? Su Xiaoxiao desperately stirred her fingers. She was so anxious that she was about to cry. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's voice rang out with a chuckle. Personal alchemist? Then forget it. Xiaoxiao, your ability is not limited to this. Become a combat alchemist. Stand by my side. The stability of your medicinal liquid allows you to stand in front of the stage and not stand behind countless people, silently refining medicinal liquid. Luo Qingtong had come into contact with those pharmaceutical maniacs in the 24th century. Which one of them didn't use pharmaceuticals to set off a frenzy? Medicine could save people, but it could also kill people. Ordinary alchemists might not be able to stand in front of the stage and become a fighting force. But Su Xiaoxiao was different. The stability of her potions meant that as long as she had enough potions, she could combine them into different potions with different effects, giving her opponents a nightmarish feeling. Most importantly, the effects of the medicinal liquid produced by such a combination were completely random, making it impossible to guard against. This was the biggest difference between Su Xiaoxiao and other alchemists. She had too many uncertainties, and this uncertainty was the guarantee of her victory. The poisons prepared by other alchemists all had corresponding antidotes, but Su Xiaoxiao didn't. Combat pharmacist? Su Xiaoxiao stared blankly at the young girl in front of her. She listened to her overturn her world one after another. Before today, she had never thought that alchemists could also fight. For most martial artists, it was already good enough that alchemists could use poison to protect themselves. Could she still fight? Inexplicably, Su Xiaoxiao's heart suddenly had a feeling of eagerness to try. She didn't know why, but she had a strong confidence. If the young girl in front of her said so, then she could definitely do it. She could do it. Chapter 477. Back in the room, Yi Qianxian looked at Luo Qingtong. Why did you think of giving her advice today? Luo Qingtong had never been a person who liked to meddle in other people's business. Probably because you don't want to see her efforts go to waste. Luo Qingtong put him on the bed and went to wash herself. A person who was able to work so hard to get rid of her fate, after being assigned to the lower class, was worthy of her advice. What's more, she liked Su Xiaoxiao's temperament of not accepting her fate, even when she was as low as dust. He couldn't tell that she was as soft as a little white rabbit, but she had such tenacity in her bones. Amen. Yi Qianxian nodded. Her innate talent is good. If your advice is effective, she may be able to walk her own path, that is completely different from other pharmacists. At that time, she can be of help to you. As he spoke, he raised his head to look at the young girl who walked to his side and sat down. The latter had just finished washing herself, and there were still some water droplets on her beautiful face. Her long black hair was scattered behind her, and the strands on her forehead were a little wet, sticking to her face. It made her look like a spirit that had just come out of the water. Yi Qianxian couldn't take his eyes off her. Everything about Luo Qingtong amazed him. Her advice to Su Xiaoxiao was something that Yi Qianxian never expected. The young girl's ideas were very bold and very different from the rest. Every time, she was able to give him an enormous surprise. Yi Qianxian thought that it was normal for him to like this woman. In this world, there had never been anyone like Luo Qingtong, who could give him all kinds of surprises and unfathomable feelings. She tempted him time and time again to go deeper and understand her more. In this way, he fell step by step. The young girl was intelligent and quick-witted, cunning and resourceful, ruthless and bold. When she was cunning, she was like a fox. When she was ruthless, she was like a fierce wolf. When she was docile, she was like a delicate cat. When she was evil, she was like a bewitching snake demon. Yi Qianxian never thought that he would fall in love with such a seductress the moment he fell in love with her, after more than 20 years of not falling in love. Moreover, she was very disobedient. But what could he do? He liked this woman. He liked her so much that he tolerated her disrespect towards him. He liked her so much that he let her break free from his control time and time again. He liked her so much that he would rather let her imprison this wisp of his soul. What happened? Seeing him staring at her without blinking, Luo Qingtong found it funny and sat beside him. She asked, "Is it because I'm too beautiful that you are stunned?" Luo Qingtong just wanted to tease him. However, yeah. Little Nether Venerable glanced at her and answered in a low voice, "I'm stunned." Luo Qingtong's face was inexplicably hot. This man learned quickly. He even knew how to flirt with her now. Fortunately, this was only a wisp of his soul. Otherwise, what could he do? Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong raised her hand and pinched his pink little face. "Since you think I'm beautiful, then quickly serve me." As she spoke, she hugged the little fellow and rolled onto the bed. "Go to sleep." As she spoke, she kissed his face. In the darkness, Yi Qianxian's pair of cute phoenix eyes, which had become smaller, stared at her. After a long time, he slowly closed his eyes. "Serve me, right?" This was what this woman had said herself. He remembered it. At this time, Luo Qingtong still didn't know how much of a trap she was in. Chapter 478. 3 days later, the competition for the first prize of the new students began. Dang dang dang. The crisp sound of the bell spread to every corner of the Tianyu Branch Academy. The competition for the first prize of the new students had always been a grand event in the Tianyu Branch Academy. In this grand event, the 10 weapons given out by the academy would be fought over by the top students of many countries. The person who won the weapons would stand out from the group of first prize winners. Near the end of the year, the top 10 students of the genius ranking would be recruited into the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. This competition for the first prize of the new students was also called the competition for the genius ranking. Those who were able to stand out from the crowd and win the first prize would become the new top 10 rankers of the genius ranking. When the top 10 rankers of the genius ranking entered the main academy of the Great Qin Sacred Academy at the end of the year, continuing their glory in the academy. Therefore, even those who weren't the first prize of the new students would come to watch this competition. They wanted to see who would get the top 10 of the genius ranking in the future. And the older students of the genius ranking would also come to watch. Dang dang dang. The crisp sound of the bell kept ringing. Luo Qingtong, Su Xiaoxiao, Sima Ju, and little tyrant Yuan went to the square together. As for how they got together, it all started with Yuan little overlord's pestering. On the second day after Sima Ju came, little tyrant Yuan came and wanted to recognize Luo Qingtong as his boss. He even said that if Sima Ju could come, why couldn't he? Luo Qingtong said angrily that Sima Ju sold himself to her. What about him? In the end, little tyrant Yuan sold himself without saying anything. Luo Qingtong was really speechless. But for little tyrant Yuan, he was a martial arts trash. Wasn't it the same no matter who he sold himself to? Anyway, it wasn't his turn to inherit the Yuan family. Moreover, he was hated by so many people in the capital of Tianyu. Maybe in the future, when a disciple of the same generation who was bullied by him broke through, his good days would come to an end. In that case, selling himself to Luo Qingtong would at least let him know how she broke through his defense before he was unlucky. It wasn't a loss at all. Little Overlord Yuan had completely given up on himself. However, what he didn't know was that this fall of his had given him a bright future. In short, little brat Yuan Luo Qingtong shamelessly made her speechless. When the group of people arrived at the square was already filled with people. There was a clear distinction between them. The ones closest to the center of the plaza were naturally the students of the elite class, followed by the advanced class, then the intermediate class, and finally the lower class. Luo Qingtong and the others were almost lined up to the edge of the square. They were completely ignored, and no one even knew if they were coming or not. Luo Qingtong didn't care about this. She raised her head to look at the huge silver tablet in front of her. She immediately saw Yuanma's name at the very top. What's that? Luo Qingtong asked little tyrant Yuan. Among them, only little overlord Yuan knew this the best. Sima Ju was a sensitive youth with low self-esteem, and Su Xiaoxiao was a shy little bunny. Only little overlord Yuan was a little jumpy. Moreover, as a tyrant of the capital, he knew a lot of things. Chapter 479. He explained to Luo Qingtong. The so-called Academy Historical Tablet is a record of all kinds of important events in the Academy, especially those that brought glory to the Academy. Then he saw Yuanma's name and said, for example, the fifth prince was admitted into the Academy of the Empire of Qin and became a new student of the Sky grade. Of course the Academy would write about it. Alas, he is a real winner in life. As he spoke, he was suddenly stabbed by Sima Ju. Hey, what are you? Before he could ask the question, he suddenly remembered something. F*CKU. The fifth prince. Isn't that boss's fiancé? And the kind that despises her. To be honest, even little overlord Yuan looked down on Yuan Mo and the Yuan imperial family's way of doing things. Originally, if you despise someone else, you can break off the engagement. If Yuanma thought he was a genius and that Luo Qingtong wasn't good enough for him, he could just break off the engagement. But they didn't. Not only did they not break off the engagement, they also looked down on the Luo clan and Luo Qingtong. After all, it wasn't that the Luo clan and Luo Qingtong had to suck up to them. It was said that the Luo clan had broken off the engagement once before. But the Tianyu royal family didn't allow it. Furthermore, according to some of the secrets of the royal family that little tyrant Yuan had heard before, it was said that Luo Qingtong's mother was the reason why Yuanma could have his current achievements and the Tianyu Empire's current status, becoming a powerful empire among the many empires. It was said that it was Luo Qingtong's mother who cured Yuanma's innate cold disease that made him a genius. Since entering the Academy of the Empire of Qin, he wasn't much weaker than the geniuses of the other holy dynasties. This kind of kindness, not to mention Yuanma's status as the wife, even the Tianyu royal family should treat the Luo clan and Luo Qingtong well. And the result? Little overlord Yuan curled his lips. It was said that the old man of the Luo family came to break off the engagement, but was humiliated by the royal family and chased away. Not only that, the imperial family even sent someone to the eastern border country to teach the Luo family a lesson, asking the aristocratic families and the imperial family there to cause trouble for the Luo family. Which part of these things looked like they were done because of someone's kindness? Even someone as arrogant and despotic as him looked down on Tianyu's royal family's actions. What was the saying again? She wanted to be a whore, but she also wanted to establish a chastity. Tianyu's royal family, on the other hand, didn't want to be labeled as ungrateful, but they couldn't even erect a memorial arch. Just as little tyrant Yuan was complaining in his heart, and was about to apologize to Luo Qingtong, and change the topic of Yuanma, an extremely arrogant voice suddenly came from the front. That's right. My royal brother is such an outstanding person. While speaking, a young girl wearing an emerald green palace dress, surrounded by a group of people, walked towards Luo Qingtong. It was 7th Princess Yuan Shui. The latter was slapped and kicked by Luo Qingtong in Yan Yuju's carriage. It wasn't until today that the swelling on her face disappeared, and she came to school. If it wasn't for that, she definitely wouldn't have been able to escape the zombie pill incident. Luo Qingtong felt that she was lucky. At this time, Yuan Shui raised her head and looked at her with an arrogant expression. Luo Qingtong, I heard that when I wasn't here, you were directly assigned to the trash class? You really lost face for my brother and the imperial family. Chapter 480. As soon as she said that, everyone in the lower class glared at her. So what if they were in the trash class? They weren't talented enough. But people like Yuan Shui might not be any better than them. Other than some second-generation heirs who were thrown into the trash class because they had no talent. Most of the people in the lower class were sent here because their family background wasn't good enough and their talent was average. If they were descendants of aristocratic families, they could still enter the intermediate class or the advanced class with their talent and the nourishment of elixirs all year round. Most of the descendants of aristocratic families entered the advanced class like this. What right did Yuan Shui have to say that about them? Little tyrant Yuan was also angry, because he was now the trash class person who was too ashamed to come to school, that Yuan Shui was talking about. F***ck your grandpa. Even if your uncle can tolerate it, your aunt can't. Yuan Shui, what the F***ck are you saying? He glared at Yuan Shui. Little tyrant Yuan was a reckless person who didn't care about anything. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become a tyrant in the imperial city as a martial arts trash. Although he was destined to not have much future, his divine power and petrification soul imprint would still give him a place in the Yuan family. When he entered the Yuan family army in the future, he wouldn't necessarily be worse than others. Therefore, Great General Yuan was still indulgent towards him. As for the other aristocratic families, they couldn't say anything when their descendants were beaten up. Who asked little tyrant Yuan to be a trash? If your descendants couldn't even beat a trash, how could you have the nerve to settle the score with the Yuan family? Therefore, little tyrant Yuan was arrogant all the way here. Even if he met Yuan Shui, he wasn't prepared to give her any face. Anyway, he was a trash who didn't inherit the family business and didn't need to curry favor with the Yuan royal family. Why should he lower his head to Yuan Shui? I was wondering why she still had the nerve to come to school. What's wrong? Yuan Shui didn't show any weakness. It wasn't that she hadn't heard of Yuan Hu's reputation. But so what? He was just a trash who relied on his brute force to show off his power. She was a princess. How could she be afraid of him? Did he really think that his brute force was invincible? She didn't bring the guards by her side. Otherwise, any one of them would be enough to beat him to the point where even dogs wouldn't recognize him. Yuan Shui didn't believe that Yuan Hu would dare to attack her. Luo Qingtong, look at what kind of people you're hanging out with. Yuan Shui's gaze was contemptuous and contemptuous. A bunch of useless trash. You didn't want the recommendation that the royal family gave you. You even faked your first place. And you were sent to the trash class. Are you trying to embarrass the royal family on purpose? To have a fiancé like you, my imperial brother is really lucky. Before she could finish her words, a slap landed on her face instantly. That slap landed right on the half of Yu Shue's face that had just healed, instantly slapping her face to one side. Blood flowed from the corner of Yu Shue's mouth. Princess! Seeing Yu Shue being slapped to the side, the people around her immediately surrounded her. Luo Qingtong, how dare you hit Princess Qi? Yu Shue also held her swollen cheek and roared at Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong, you be teach, how dare you hit me? The same slap overlapped with the one that Yu Shue had suffered in Yin Yuju's carriage, causing her anger and humiliation to soar. What right did Luo Qingtong have to hit her? She only deserved to be humiliated and trampled on. What right did she have to hit her? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.